Have you ever been told that you or someone you love is just average? That crushing moment when someone decides to put a ceiling on potential? My daughter was labeled average by her teachers for years. They said she'd be lucky to get into a state college. But then Harvard called her name. Stay with me to discover how we transformed average into exceptional and how you can do the same for yourself or someone you love. Welcome to Plot Twist Life, where ordinary stories take extraordinary turns. If this is your first time here, I share real stories of unexpected transformations that changed people's lives forever. Before I tell you how my daughter went from being dismissed as average to walking through Harvard's prestigious gates, take a second to subscribe to Plot Twist Life and hit that notification bell. These stories might just give you the inspiration you need when facing your own impossible odds. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when I sat across from my daughter's 8th grade teacher, a woman with wire-rimmed glasses and 25 years of experience. Her classroom smelled of chalk dust and hand sanitizer. I remember the exact words that would haunt me for years. "Your daughter is average," she said, tapping her red pen against my daughter Lily's latest math test. "She works hard, but she's just not gifted. I'd focus on state schools when the time comes." The way she said average made it sound like a terminal diagnosis. Final, unchangeable. I nodded politely while something inside me crumbled. Not because I needed my daughter to be exceptional, but because I saw something in Lily that these educators seemed to miss completely. You see, Lily wasn't the typical smart kid. She didn't raise her hand first in class. She wasn't quick with answers. When faced with a new concept, she would grow quiet, her brow furrowed in concentration. Other students would race ahead while she methodically processed information. What teachers saw as slowness, I recognized as thoroughness. What they labeled as average, I knew was actually deep thinking. On the drive home, I glanced at Lily in the passenger seat. At 14, she was already carrying the weight of other people's expectations, or lack thereof. "What did Mrs. Wilson say about me?" she asked, her voice small. I could have sugar-coated it. I could have lied. But I've always believed that the truth, even when painful, is the foundation of growth. "She thinks you're average, honey." Lily nodded, as if confirming something she'd suspected all along. A single tear rolled down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away. That tear ignited something in me. Determination mixed with quiet rage. "But here's the thing, Lily," I continued, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "Being underestimated might be the greatest advantage you'll ever have." She looked at me, confused. "How is that an advantage?" "Because when people expect nothing extraordinary from you, they don't see you coming." That conversation marked the beginning of our journey, one that would ultimately lead to an acceptance letter from Harvard University. But the path between that rainy Tuesday and the day we opened that letter was anything but straightforward. That night I stayed up researching learning styles, educational psychology, and cognitive development. I learned about late bloomers like Einstein, who didn't speak until he was 4. About Thomas Edison, who was called addled by his teachers. About J.K. Rowling, who was rejected by 12 publishers before Harry Potter found a home. I discovered that our educational system often rewards quick thinking over deep thinking. It celebrates those who can produce immediate answers rather than those who take time to develop profound understanding. And Lily was definitely the latter. The next morning, I made Lily breakfast, blueberry pancakes, her favorite, and laid out a proposal. "Let's create our own path," I suggested. "School is important, but it's just one part of your education." Together, we created what we called the Depth Project. For every subject Lily studied in school, she would choose one aspect that genuinely interested her and explore it deeply, beyond what was required for class. This wasn't about grades. It was about nurturing her natural inclination toward thoroughness and deep understanding. For history class, where they were studying the Civil War in a broad overview, Lily became fascinated with the medical practices of the era. She read diaries of Civil War nurses, analyzed the evolution of battlefield medicine, and even recreated some of the herbal remedies they used, the non-toxic ones, of course. Her science teacher was covering basic physics, teaching formulae to memorize. Lily decided to explore how physics principles explained her favorite hobby, photography. She experimented with light, lenses, and exposure times, creating a portfolio that demonstrated physics concepts through striking images. In English class, they were reading To Kill a Mockingbird. While other students were writing standard essays about themes and symbols, Lily researched Harper Lee's life and the real-life cases that may have inspired the novel. She created a multimedia presentation connecting the fictional case of Tom Robinson to actual court cases from that era. The first few months were hard. Lily's grades didn't immediately improve. Some nights, she would cry from frustration, questioning whether the extra work was worth it. "Maybe I am just average," she said one night, pushing away her notes on Renaissance art, her deep dive extension from world history class. "The problem isn't that you're average, Lily," I told her. "The problem is that the system is measuring the wrong things. They're measuring how quickly you can memorize information for a test, not how deeply you understand it or what you can create with that knowledge." By the end of 9th grade, something began to shift. Lily's teachers started noticing the depth of her questions in class. Her essays, while sometimes turned in right at the deadline, showed insights that surprised them. One teacher pulled me aside after a parent-teacher conference. "What's happened to Lily?" she asked. "She's different somehow." What had happened was simple. Lily had stopped trying to be the student her teachers expected her to be, and started being the learner she naturally was. As 10th grade began, we added another element to our approach. I connected Lily with mentors, professionals working in fields that interested her. A local photographer who taught her about composition and light, a nurse who had served in disaster zones, a historian specializing in women's roles during wartime. These relationships proved transformative. For the first time, Lily was interacting with adults who valued her methodical approach, who didn't see her as average, but as someone with genuine potential. One mentor in particular, Dr. Eleanor Chen, a professor of anthropology at the local community college, recognized something special in Lily's way of thinking. "Your daughter has what we call interdisciplinary intelligence," Dr. Chen told me over coffee. "She naturally makes connections between different fields of knowledge. That's rare, and it's valuable." Dr. Chen invited Lily to audit one of her college classes, Introduction to Cultural Anthropology. At 16, Lily was by far the youngest person in the room. I worried it might overwhelm her, but instead it was like watching a flower finally find the right conditions to bloom. The college environment suited Lily's learning style. Professors asked questions without expecting immediate answers. Discussions were exploratory rather than competitive. Research was valued over memorization. Lily's final project for that anthropology class, an analysis of how cultural perceptions of time affect learning styles, impressed Dr. Chen so much that she helped Lily submit it to a young scholars journal. To our amazement, they published it. That publication became a turning point. Lily's high school teachers could no longer dismiss her as average, not when she had a published academic paper at 16. Her confidence grew, not because she was suddenly acing standardized tests, though her scores did improve, but because she had found evidence that her way of thinking had value. Junior year brought new challenges. College was approaching, and despite Lily's growth, her GPA was still not what elite universities typically looked for. Her test scores, while improved, weren't in the exceptional range. On paper, she still didn't look like a Harvard candidate, but by this time, Lily had developed something more valuable than perfect grades: a portfolio of deep, self-directed work that demonstrated her unique intellectual approach. She had continued publishing 2 more papers in young scholars' journals and a photo essay in a respected photography magazine. She had correspondence with professionals in fields ranging from medical history to architectural design. Most importantly, she had found her intellectual voice. The quiet, uncertain girl who had accepted the average label was gone. In her place was a young woman who understood her own mind and valued her methodical approach to learning. When it came time to apply for colleges, we decided on a dual strategy. Lily would apply to schools where her grades and test scores made her a good fit, but she would also reach for the stars, including Harvard. "They'll probably reject me," she said matter-of-factly as she worked on her Harvard application. "But I want them to see me. Even if they say no, I want them to see what I've done." Her personal essay wasn't about overcoming adversity or achieving great success. Instead, she wrote about the value of slow thinking in a fast-paced world. She described her journey from seeing her methodical mind as a liability to recognizing it as her greatest strength. With her application, she included a portfolio of her published work and independent projects. She sent recommendation letters not just from teachers, but from her mentors, professionals who could speak to her potential in ways that traditional educators might miss. Then came the waiting. The day Harvard's decision was due, Lily insisted on checking her email alone. I respected her wishes, but waited anxiously in the living room, pretending to read a book while actually staring at the same paragraph for 30 minutes. When she emerged from her bedroom, her face was unreadable. "Well?" I asked, my heart in my throat. She handed me her phone. I read the first line of the email. "Dear Lily, I am delighted to inform you that the Committee on Admissions has admitted you to the Harvard class of..." I couldn't read further through my tears. I looked up to see Lily's face transform with a smile that held not just joy, but vindication. "They saw me," she whispered. "They actually saw me." That moment wasn't just about Harvard. It was about a girl who had been told she was average, discovering that her different way of thinking, her thoroughness, her depth, her interdisciplinary connections, was actually extraordinary. The acceptance didn't come because Lily had transformed into a conventional high achiever. It came because she had embraced her unconventional mind and found ways to demonstrate its value. When word got out about Lily's Harvard acceptance, her former teachers were shocked. Some were genuinely happy for her. Others seemed almost offended, as if her success somehow reflected poorly on their judgment. Mrs. Wilson, the 8th grade teacher who had first labeled Lily as average, sent her a card. Inside was a brief note. "I was wrong about you. Congratulations." Ma, Lily read the note, then tucked it into her journal. "I'm not angry at her anymore," she told me. She was measuring me by the only yardstick she knew. Lily's journey taught me lessons I never expected to learn as a parent. First, labels are limitations. When we accept someone else's assessment of our capabilities or our children's capabilities, we surrender our power to define ourselves. Second, educational systems are designed for certain types of minds. If your mind works differently, that doesn't make you less intelligent. It just means you need to find or create environments that value your way of thinking. Third, being underestimated can indeed be an advantage. It removes the pressure of high expectations and gives you the freedom to develop at your own pace, in your own way. Fourth, deep understanding takes time. Our culture's obsession with speed, quick answers, immediate results, rapid advancement, overlooks the value of methodical thinking and thorough comprehension. And finally, success doesn't always look like we expect it to. Lily's path to Harvard wasn't paved with perfect report cards and academic accolades from an early age. It was built on self-knowledge, perseverance, and the courage to value her natural way of learning even when others dismissed it. Today, Lily is thriving at Harvard. She's not the quickest student in her classes, and she's fine with that. She's found her community, other deep thinkers who value thoroughness over speed, understanding over memorization. Her professors appreciate her interdisciplinary approach and her ability to make connections that others miss. One recently told her that her final paper was graduate-level work, not because it was technically perfect, but because it showed a depth of understanding rare in undergraduate students. Lily still faces challenges. The pace at Harvard is intense, and she sometimes struggles to keep up with reading assignments or timed exams. But she's developed strategies that work for her, and she's no longer ashamed to ask for the accommodations she needs. More importantly, she's secure in the knowledge that her mind, exactly as it is, has value. That average doesn't define her. That her way of thinking, methodical, thorough, interconnected, is not just acceptable, but exceptional in its own right. As for me, I've become something of an advocate for late bloomers and unconventional learners. I speak at parent groups about recognizing and nurturing different types of intelligence. I mentor families navigating educational systems that don't accommodate their children's learning styles. And I keep a framed quote on my desk, words that guided our journey when the path seemed darkest. Everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Lily wasn't average. She was a fish being judged on her tree-climbing abilities. When we finally found water, environments that suited her natural way of learning, she didn't just swim. She soared. If you're raising a child who's been labeled as average, or if you've carried that label yourself, I want you to hear this. Average isn't a fact. It's a perspective, and often a limited one. The mind that processes slowly may be thinking more deeply. The student who asks irrelevant questions may be making connections others haven't seen. The child who seems disengaged might simply be learning in ways that aren't visible or valued in traditional settings. Your job, as a parent or as an individual, isn't to force yourself or your child to fit the standard model of success. It's to recognize the unique pattern of strengths and challenges you're working with, and to create or find environments where those strengths can flourish. Harvard wasn't the goal. It was validation of a journey we would have taken regardless. The journey to help Lily discover and value her true intellectual identity. And that journey is available to everyone, regardless of where you start or what labels you've been given. The path may be longer or more winding than you expect. There will be tears and doubts and moments when giving up seems rational. But if you persist, if you refuse to accept the limitations others place on you, you may discover that average was never an accurate description. It was just a failure of imagination. Theirs, not yours. My daughter's story is just one of many incredible life transformations I share here on Plot Twist Life. From being labeled as average to walking through Harvard's gates, her journey shows that labels don't define our potential. Our persistence and belief in ourselves do. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, or if you're raising a child who's been dismissed as just average, I want to hear from you. Share your experience in the comments below. How did you or your loved one break free from limiting labels? And if you want more stories that challenge conventional wisdom about success and potential, subscribe to Plot Twist Life right now. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss our next video about the janitor who became a Wall Street legend without a college degree. Remember, the most powerful plot twists in life often begin when someone tells you what you can't do. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.